If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so honored today to have movie producers and movie talent and Suzan Beraza and Jeb Berrier from the movie Bag It are here today to tell us about this critical and important documentary which looks at the impacts of plastic on society. Welcome, Suzan, and welcome, Jeb, to Green is Good.
Thank you.
Hey,
thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's an honor. You know, Mike and I have been talking behind the scenes already about this great movie. Please tell our listeners how you met, how this movie came to be, and share the journey with us today. It's all about you and all about your great movie, Bag It.
Well, thank you. I started off, I'm the director of the film, and it started off that I was doing a short film about a plastic bag reduction campaign that was happening between the towns of Telluride and Aspen in Colorado. And as we got into it and we started researching plastic, we started finding out all kinds of things that we really had no idea about, how different plastics are ending up in our oceans and about how it's impacting our health. And when I realized it was going to be a much bigger movie, I talked to my friend Jeb Berrier, who's in the film, and he can talk a little bit about it. But I asked him to come on board and be the talent of the film because I really wanted to make it a personal story as opposed to just a bunch of talking scientists. And also Jeb is very funny, as you'll see when people see the film. And he kind of gives it that touch of adding a little bit of sanity to the story and making it a lot more fun as a journey.
And Jeb,
add to that.
And Jeb, you're admittedly not a tree hugger, so there was real credibility and legitimacy about you being the real life talent in the movie, right?
Yeah, and I think it really works. I mean, it kind of couldn't have worked out better for how the film turned out. That as I started working on this with Suzan and started to explore this topic of plastic, which I really knew very little about. I really think I knew probably about what the average person knows. I'd never heard of BPA. I'd never heard of phthalates. I didn't really know much about the trash in the ocean. And so as I learned, hopefully what happens is as people are watching the film, they go on that journey with me.
Gotcha.
And that was, I think Suzanne just really wanted to have a face that people could relate to in the movie, like she said. And then the more we got into it, the more I became passionate about it, and the more it sort of became my story.
Suzan, I mean, when did you start this process with Jeb, and how long did it take for you to actually start, create, film, edit, and get it out?
We started filming in June 2008, and Jeb came on pretty soon after, maybe in July or August. And, documentaries take a long time, and people are always amazed. So it was pretty much 2 years to make the film and edit the film. And then the past few months, we've been on the film festival circuit, and we're doing community screenings.
Well, let's not.
So yeah, it does take a while.
Well, let's not just glance over being on the film festival circuit. I see a lot of awards here. You've won. The movie's already gotten a lot of recognition. Is that not true?
Yeah, it has. The thing that wins most often is the Audience Choice Award, which I'm especially thrilled about because it means that people, like real people, are liking the film. So that's we've won quite a few awards, and it's really exciting. It's doing much better than I probably could have ever hoped.
And for our listeners out there that have an iPad or their laptop or something or some computer device open right now, you can go and learn much more, see a trailer, read their blog, order the DVD in the next couple of weeks, which will soon be available. Go to their great website, bagitmovie.com, BAGIT movie.com. So, Jeb, tell us about this. Tell us about the journey. So this was you guys worked together for 2 years? Explain the journey here.
Well, honestly, Suzanne worked a lot more than I did.
Okay.
Because she was editing and shooting, and I was sort of going out and shooting stuff when we would take these trips So it was, for me, it was spread out over 2 years.
Got it.
But yeah, it was one of these things that every time, it's a subject where every time you learn a little bit, you realize that there's so much more that you have to kind of track down.
And go ahead, explain that.
Well, I think that's why it ended up taking as long as it did, because we would learn something new, and then we'd realize, oh my gosh, we've got to go explore this. We want to talk about what happens to our plastic recycling. We want to talk about, the concept of the single-use disposable plastic. So each time one thing would lead to another.
Well, Jeb, as we go through your journey here, I want to just read out some, thanks to both of you, Mike and I received in advance a hot sheet on some plastic statistics that our listeners have to hear. And I'm just going to share one of them here. 2 million plastic bottles are consumed in the U.S. every 5 minutes. Less than 25% are recycled. I mean, that's appalling. It's appalling. So I mean, this is what you're going to show in the movie and what you've shown in the movie, and it's just amazing. I mean, we've got to get so more conscious of what's going on. Besides the inspiration for the film, Suzan, obviously for a movie maker, funding is for an entrepreneur, for a movie maker, funding is always important. Who backed you on this movie? How did that turn out?
We are a nonprofit, so we got help from individuals, from different family foundations, from a couple of sort of, I guess you would call them greener companies like Patagonia. Our kind of deal from the very beginning is we would not take money from anyone who would either try to change our content or want to look at the film. We really wanted it to be free of corporate interest. And also we wouldn't take money from any company that looked like they could somehow either benefit or be hurt by the film. So we really were careful who we got funding from. It's definitely a lower budget documentary, and that's part of the reason it took a while too. Is sometimes we would basically be out of money, and we would have to wait until some funding came in, and then we would go off on another trip and do some more.
So entrepreneur, ecopreneur movie making is really what you did here.
Yeah, and I'll add something to that. This was happening right during when the economy was really tanking, and people were giving less money for things. And every time we would show a little bit of the movie, this was a subject that people really got excited about, and that helped a lot for fundraising.
That's great.
Wouldn't you say, Suzanne?
Yeah, I mean, people were I was really shocked that people gave as much as they did, really, honestly.
Wow. And one of the pieces of information that you've supplied that has actually made it into some mainstream media is the floating island of plastic debris in the ocean, which now is more than twice the size of Texas. Mm-hmm. Can you explain a little bit about the how you cover that in the movie and why our listeners have to really listen and watch and understand what we're doing to the ocean?
Suzanne, do you want me to talk about it? Or
sure, yeah.
Well, it's called the technical term that's been given to it is the North Pacific Subtropical Gyre. It's basically the area where, and there are 5 gyres, we think, in all the different oceans. But this is the one that people have investigated the most. And my thought always was that it would be this island of trash that you could see, sort of all clumped together.
Right.
And really what it is, which is almost more terrifying, is you can't really see it. You can see some plastic floating, but the plastic is spread out. A lot of it's under the surface of the water, and a lot of it is breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces. So it's doing a few things that are really kind of horrible to think about. One of them is, as they get smaller, animals mistake these little pieces of plastic for food. And so birds and whales and all kinds of things that, they're used to just eating whatever they find out there in the ocean, thinking it's food, and now they're getting a lot of plastic. And they're finding plankton to plastic ratios which are going up from what are they finding now, like 40 to 1?
Yeah, I think in even one study it was 60 to 1.
So what that means is that if an animal thinks it's getting food, it's actually not getting food, it's getting plastic, and there's no nutrition. The other thing that they think might be happening, or they know, there's a lot of toxic chemicals in the ocean already, just things that we've put into the environment over the years. Those chemicals are bonding to the plastic. So what you're finding is high concentrations of toxins that are sort of latching onto the plastic. The plastic acts like a magnet or a sponge. So that the other fear is that as fish eat these things, they're getting those toxins, and that's going to go up the food chain, and eventually it's going to affect us. So, it's one of those subjects when you start to learn about it, it's incredibly daunting, it's incredibly depressing, but you kind of have to get past that and think, what can we do now we can at least try to stop putting more plastic in. I mean, the rate that the plastic is going in there, it's coming from land mostly.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
And one thing that I will just quickly add is, people, when you hear this sort of what we're talking about right now, you might think, oh boy, this is going to be a real downer movie. And I feel like a lot of documentaries are pretty depressing, and people just leave kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? We are so doomed. But one thing that we really worked hard on, Jeb and I really tried and worked on this, is to make sure the film is actually funny and accessible. So you're thinking, okay, how could it be funny with all this bad news? But there's a lot of really fun, touching moments that audiences are really liking. So I hope that people will still want to come see it and not feel like it's just going to be a really depressing story. But
that's also why people, I think, really appreciate the film, because it leaves you with a sense of some sort of sense of empowerment. It doesn't just show you a bunch of horrible things and then leave you with that. It leaves you with, these are some things that we all can do to try and deal with this. And it leaves you with a positive, you walk out of the theater, I think, feeling like I can do something about this.
Right.
Which I think is, that was Suzanne's, her wish, and I think it really works, and I think that's why people are really responding to this film.
Well, Jeb, on the air with us right now, Jeb Berrier and Suzan Beraza, director and talent in the movie called Bag It, a documentary about the proliferation of plastic in our world and how it has really come to turn around and bite us. But you guys are talking about empowerment, and it really is, it fits right in the wheelhouse of the theme of our show, which is all about solution-based. It's all about what can we do. And in reading some of the things that we have read recently about just all of the plastic that's come in, you mentioned, Jeb, about the proliferation of plastic going into the food chain for the animals mistaking down to a plankton-size level plastic for foods. That's one other thing for us to worry about. People are thinking about mercury in fish, but this is a whole other level. There is a book out that I'm sure you guys have probably read. And, John, I've got a copy that I want to give to you. It's called The Eye of the Whale. And it is a fascinating look at just what happens and how important, even at a plankton level, the oceans are to all life forms and how interconnected we are. And if you've not read the book, it's by a man named Abramson. It is The Eye of the Whale. Definite recommended reading.
Great.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we disregard the fact that nature is so delicately balanced. We as humans are so delicately balanced, and a lot of times we think that we can improve on nature or make it work a little bit better for us, or we put things into our bodies that we think are better for us. A lot of times we're learning over and over if we just stick to what nature has designed for us, that we're a lot better off.
Yeah, and one of the things that we hit on a few times in the film is this concept of, when you talk about the ocean, you think, well, that's not near me. That's away. And one of the things that was said by a few different people that we interviewed is, there is no away. There's no such thing as away.
There's no place called away.
Yeah, so
No.
if you have a plastic bottle and you throw it away, Well, it's not going away. It's going somewhere.
You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right, Jeb. I mean, and so you follow in part of the movie. You follow that the whole chain of where it goes. I take it. Mm-hmm. Also for our listeners out there, your movie Bag It, which is being shown now around the country in different specific theaters and going to get probably more showing and going to be soon coming out on a DVD. They can go to your website, bagitmovie.com, and see trailers and the blog. But also, you have interviewed in this movie, Suzan, many people besides following Jeb's journey. There's a lot of interviews. You want to share some of the people you interviewed and some of the pearls of wisdom that they shared back that our listeners would be able to see if they saw this movie?
Yeah. And on the health side, we interviewed a few top scientists who've been studying the effects of BPA and phthalates on human reproduction. And the names may not mean a lot to viewers, but it's Dr. Frederick von Saul and Dr. Theo Colborn.
Shauna Swan.
Yep, Dr. Shauna Swan. And then with the oceans, we just really went and talked to all sorts of different NGOs that are working on this, like Oceana and Algalita Marine Research Foundation. We talked to Environmental Working Group, Washington Toxics Coalition.
I saw that
a lot of recycling centers.
A lot of heavy-hitting kind of environmental, Chris Jordan,
sure,
who is a really amazing photographer who does these huge portraits of numbers of things that we use.
You had our friend and our previous guest Sharon Rowe from Eco Bags on.
Yeah,
oh, yeah, exactly.
She's the one who said there is no way.
There is no way. She's right too. Also, Captain Paul Watson from the Sea Shepherd.
Yep.
Wow.
And Paul Watson, who's in the TV show Whale Wars.
Right.
Has been getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
We also did a really fun early interview. We found out about these guys who were sailing a boat made out of plastic bottles.
Yeah. Yes.
The junk.
Yeah. I'm aware of that. This is an interview that's included in the movie, right?
Yeah, so we did an interview. They had a camera. They were in the middle of the Pacific somewhere on their way to Hawaii.
That's so cool.
And so they filmed themselves, and we filmed me here in Colorado.
So really, as you both said earlier, the story and the importance of this issue, even though, as Jeb, you pointed out, we were in a very bad point in our economic history in the U.S., obviously with this lineup of green rock star guests that you had here, and activists and thought leaders, obviously this subject matter resonated with so many. Everyone was willing to participate and want to help your efforts.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people felt like it was a topic that hadn't been covered nearly enough. There have been little bits here and there in the news, but it's been kind of shelved or pushed under the carpet. So people really, I think, felt like it was time for the population to know more.
Yeah.
We're here with Suzan Beraza and Jeb Berrier from the movie Bag It. Another couple of amazing statistics you've passed along to Mike and I prior to the show. 14 million pounds of trash end up in the ocean each year. The average American contributes 800 pounds of packaging waste to landfills per year. The U.S. was once the largest exporter of oil in the world. Now it's the largest importer. Unbelievable. These are just amazing statistics that the world has to know. So listen, we love what you're doing, and we are so proud of this movie and so excited to help you get the word out. Tell us let's move on now. Let's be intelligent optimists and move on to the solution side. What are some of the solutions that you show in the movie that you learned in your journey that our listeners can really, right now, as they listen to the show, before they even watch your great movie, that they can avail themselves of so we can turn this ship around here in the U.S. and beyond and stop, polluting our environment and start nurturing it again?
Yeah, I mean, it even gets down to polluting our own bodies. And I would say that if anyone knows someone who's pregnant, or if they're pregnant, or if they have young children, there are some really simple things to avoid to help you have a much healthier pregnancy.
Please share.
And a lot of these chemicals are in plastics. And the thing that really surprised me that I didn't know was that all canned foods, almost every canned food, canned drinks, sodas, that they're beer, although a pregnant woman hopefully wouldn't be drinking beer, but all canned foods are lined with BPA, with a plastic lining that includes BPA. So these are the kinds of things that once you have the awareness, these are simple things you can do to avoid things like canned foods.
All
and
canned
using
food.
Lotions and shampoos, and those are things that tend to contain phthalates. So, and our website, too, will have a bunch of suggestions for people if they are trying to avoid products that have phthalates in them, or if they're trying to avoid using as much plastic as well. There are a lot of things you can do to use way less plastic in your life. And the three that we like to look at really that are super easy to get out of your life immediately are plastic bottles, plastic bags, and coffee teacups that you get from to-go places. They are lined in plastic, and they also have plastic lids.
And those are also throwaway items.
Right.
Yeah, they're like one use and they're gone.
When you start to think about, I love coffee and I love to eat and I love all that stuff, but it's not that hard to have your own cup, to have your own bag, to
Great
have
point.
your own bottle for water.
Great point. That's a great point. Just some of the solutions that you provided to Mike and I prior to the show. China, an emerging economy, banned ultra-thin plastic bags in 2008, and they reduced their use by 40 billion bags the first year. I mean, what are we doing here in the United States? This is just a massive opportunity on the bag issue to clean up our environment, and as you said, Suzan, to clean up ourselves.
Yeah. I think, the politics, the lobbying efforts are very strong in the U.S., and we all know that. And the plastic lobby, the plastic bag companies, the chemical companies, they've really dug their heels in, and they just don't want there to be any victories with things like putting fees on plastic bags, like what was attempted in Seattle, or banning plastic bags outright. I think it's just going to take a huge awareness campaign, and just for these companies to realize that they can be on the forefront and make alternatives, and not just say, okay, they keep trying to justify that plastic bags are good and they're fine, and they come up with all sorts of reasons and statistics that make them a better choice. But, it's pretty thinly veiled, and if we just really bring our own to a lot of these places. I mean, in Europe, people have been charged for bags, a lot of times even since the 1980s, and it's like what people expected. So I think that if these companies maybe think about ways they can be part of the solution instead of just sort of trying to keep the status quo, that they can really become forward-thinking.
And a lot of this, it's not like one. I don't think we feel that there's any one solution that's going to be the silver bullet. It's going to take people being more aware, people being more active. It's going to take government, and the people can influence the government, and it's going to take changes from industry. And so I think if everybody's sort of working at it at all the angles, I think we feel pretty optimistic that we can change a lot.
That's really well done. We're down to the last minute or so. So Suzan and Jeb, I just want to let you guys share any last thoughts you have. I know I think that's very hopeful what you just said, Jeb. I know we can all do a lot to turn this thing around. And again, for our listeners out there, bagitmovie.com. You're going to be able to buy the DVD, see the trailer, read their blog, bagitmovie.com. Suzan and Jeb, please share any last thoughts you have in the last minute or so that we have before we sign off here.
Well, one thing that people can do to get involved is they can arrange a screening. And on our website, we show places that we're doing screenings around the country, so people can hopefully come to a screening, or they can even arrange a screening. We also have several educational cuts of the film, a 45-minute version and a 65-minute version. So if people have any schools where they'd like the film to show, they can get in touch with us and we can make that happen.
And I'd just like to throw in that, plastic is an amazing substance. We say this in the film. It's not a anti-plastic. It's how we use plastic and what kind of plastic we use. Plastic has a purpose, and it's an amazing material. we just have to be smart about, like I said, how we use it and what we use it for.
Well, Suzan and Jeb, Mike and I are so honored and thrilled that you were able to come on today from Colorado and share this great story of Bag It with us. And we ask our listeners to support. And as Suzan said, go to the website, bagitmovie.com. If you want to host a screening, contact them to host a screening. If not, buy the DVD, read their blog, see what you can do to become part of the solution. Suzan and Jeb, you are both inspirational. You are totally leaders of the Green Revolution. Mike and I applaud both of you, and we're thrilled to have you on. And you are truly living proof that green is good.
It is. Thank you so much.
Guys. Thank you.
This program will be available for downloading in a couple of days from our station's website, keyword podcast. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week at the same time for another edition of Green is Good.